Thank you for listening to the Dog Trainers Podcast, a podcast created by dog trainers for dog trainers, or anyone who's ever fallen in love with man's best friend.
Yeah, absolutely. And with that, I think I want to introduce another topic here. Forgive me, guys, I'm copy pasting a little bit.
Yep.
So, since we're talking about the importance of learning how to task switch between methods, I do want to talk about the potential downside therein, because everything's about balance, right?
Yeah, good.
Is people can often tend, when they're newer trainers, to bounce between methods without ever mastering one. And I think that has a lot of downside to it too. And I just wanted to make the
So this is number 2, right? So bouncing
Correct.
between methods and never mastering one.
Correct. Exactly.
Second thing that new dog trainers do wrong.
Right. And we'll be sure to recap this at the end for everyone too.
Yep.
So when we're talking about task switching and never really mastering a single method, I think of the whole like white belt dog trainer thing. And the reason why, and I won't belay this point because we talk about like every day, is the reason why is, as a white belt, as we've talked about before, as a new trainer, your job is to get a game plan going. Something like we were talking about with the prong collar. If you're really good with the prong when you're newer, you just convince people to do prong because that's what you know. And you learned that because you believe it to be the best. We get it. However, a lot of people make this mistake. They think, okay, it's good to learn prong and slip lead and halty and gentle and food and which it is, except they try to do it all at once. And a lot of these different methods have very, very different feels to them, like from beginning to end. When you're good enough, you can blend between them back and forth. However, when you're first learning, you tend to do yourself a disservice by not really mastering any one thing, because now you have no game plan. Now you're just kind of free floating. And the reason why I make the point of the white belt dog trainer is because, again, in jiu-jitsu as a white belt, your job is to get a game plan. If you're good at leg locks, you go for the leg lock. If you're good at whatever, you go for that. And the other person's job is to throw you off. So your job is to stick to your one game plan as best as you can, because they're a white belt too. They only have their one game plan too. So it's a battle of wills at that point. But the better you get, the more game plans you can have. But you can't sacrifice the bird in the hand for the one in the bush.
Right.
So have a game plan, stick to it. Then when you have it solid, then deviate, but not before.
That's 100%. I agree with that. I think one thing that also happens is, I've always been a trainer that has had an abundance of dogs to work with, right? Like working for a facility, we had many board and trains. Probably I did a year of board and trains before I ever even took a client, right? So I had hundreds of dogs under my belt before I even taught someone how to train a dog. Right. And the interesting thing is, I think if we are bouncing around between methods, it's easier for me to play with certain methods when I have like 4 weeks to train a dog.
Right.
It's not easy for me to do that if I have a paying customer and I have 6 private sessions to try and do stuff. Right.
So 6 hours,
6 hours to play around with different methods. Right. And so I think one of the big things that helped me, growing up in a facility was, the number of dogs I got. And, there were some dogs that I was like, this dog has a high food drive, so I'm going to learn these techniques. Or this dog loves to play with toys, so I'm going to learn these techniques. And, I would look up different things and apply them with dogs in training. However, I stuck to a game plan to make sure that the dogs learned their fundamentals that people were paying for.
Right.
So I was, in essence, I was a white belt and I only deviated, but I would come back to my format to make sure the dogs were learning the format that company particularly was learning. And through that process, as I got good at those deviations, now I would actually throw those into the actual company curriculum. And then finally, when I became the training manager of that company, we revamped the whole curriculum. Yeah. You know what I mean? We changed the systems of training. We added more positive stuff. We added more food work. We added more play. We added more awesomeness. So we got dogs who were,
sharper.
They were sharper. They were happier. We had happier clients. We were actually able to expand different group classes because of those different methods, right? So I was able to teach a food-based group class. I was able to teach a puppy group class because of that, the toy seminar, toy works, all ththese different workshops. Right. And it was cool because I had the dogs and the people to play with, right? Working at a facility. So I guess the point I was trying to make is it's easier for you to deviate if you have a game plan, as you mentioned, and if you have an abundance of dogs to work with, right? And I have some friends that, they didn't work at a shelter, or they didn't work at a kennel, but they volunteered at shelters all the time. So they had an abundance of dogs to play with and learn techniques and just kind of exercise their new skills that they were learning with dogs who needed it, and it helped.
Can I point out the quintessential difference between why it worked for you and it doesn't work for the white belt dog trainer?
Yeah.
You were good enough to deviate and come back to your format. You were a blue belt dog trainer. Deviating is good, but get your game plan down first. Brent did that, then started experimenting.
Yeah.
Because you knew if something wasn't working, you can still come back to your core. You still already had a solid foundation in X, right? That's that difference. So for people listening, you guys, make sure that you've got a game plan, something. We would encourage you to have a sort of game plan like that. You've even have written out, like I've got my phases of training behind me. I know Brent has his that he breaks down, something that lets you know, am I on track or am I not? Okay. Now,
Yep.
I want to bring up another point here. I find that when a newer dog trainer, and I respect it, by the way, and owners is the same thing. I meet owners all the time. I'm sure you do too. Like it's 2021, right? Like owners tend to problem solve by themselves, right? YouTube University. I was told that today. I thought that was funny. And I get it. I like them being proactive. However, they tend to look something up and try it once, try it twice, and it doesn't work twice or like in 2 tries, so they give up too early. That's something that I really find is a potential downside. And I wanted to point this out if anybody listened to our interviews with Michael Ellis and our interview with Blake Rodriguez. Michael Ellis pointed out to us, I think a lot of them did, Tommy Davis and Tyler all pointed out to us, of all the obvious good sides to social media and dog training, the potential downside, or one of them, is there's so much info out there that trainers don't ever gain traction in any one thing. They see this and then they see that and then they see this and this, and they try everything, and because they were telling us that, I was asking Blake about it, and I got the sense that like he felt like I was trying to lead him in that direction. And I was like, no, I mean, if you don't feel that that's the case, then don't say it, but that's kind of what I was expecting anyway, he would say. And then he didn't, which is fine. And then later we kind of circled back around to it, and then he did. And I was like, oh, okay. I think he was more weary of felt like I was pushing him in the direction.
Right.
But I bring that up because the point I'm making is the potential downside, as agreed upon by pretty much, I think, everybody that's been on with us, of all the different YouTube and Instagram and all that good stuff, is yes, try things, but don't give up in 2 seconds. It's not going to work right away, because not only is it new, this concept, to the dog or the owner, but it's new to you as the trainer. So you still need to learn the fundamentals behind that particular method.
Right. I always tell my clients, I said, what's on YouTube isn't wrong. It's just incomplete.
Right. 1,000%. I say that too. Yeah.
And so it's just a matter of, explaining that to them. But also, I mean, we're talking about dog trainers here, right? So like dog trainers sometimes fall into the same thing. Right. And I think it's tricky. I think it comes back to that abundance of training of dogs.
Tricky.
Oh,
sorry, go ahead.
Tricky. Oh, dance. Is that the one you were doing?
It's tricky to rock around to rock.
Oh yeah, that's
around.
the way.
That's right on time. It's
tricky. Anyways, well, welcome to our rap group, guys.
Yeah.
All right. So let's see. Confusing to the dog. Oh yeah. So sorry, where were you at? What point were you at?
I was just making the point that if you don't give it a method a chance to work and you give up too early, you never really did it justice.
And I hope, and I like to have faith in people who call themselves dog trainers, that you guys do have a game plan, you know, but those of you guys who are struggling, should I do this? Should I do that? Cause I had a call with a good friend who's a dog trainer recently, and she calls me and she goes, she comes from like a T3 camp, so she's from Sean, Jeff, and Jeff and everybody. And she goes, okay, Brent, I'm officially a fan of Michael Ellis. And I'm just like, where have you been?
I know.
Where have you been? But she goes, okay, I just went down this rabbit hole and I was listening to Michael Ellis, and she got worried, because she goes, he was hearing all these things and they made 100% sense. And, I feel like, like like I feel anxious. Like I feel anxious that there's so much out there that I don't
Mhm.
know. And so she was kind of having this little anxious moment with me where she was saying like, so should I practice more of this or should I do that? And I said, do your thing,
Mhm.
stick to your game plan. And
Mhm.
when you can, if you have a board and train or you have a friend's dog that you want to practice with, because you're a good trainer, I told her. So you're a great
Right.
trainer. But yes, all that other stuff helps you. But you don't deviate off of your game plan just yet.
Mhm.
And so it's exactly that. It's seeing all this content online can definitely make you feel that you don't know shit.
Yeah, it's intimidating.
It's intimidating that you don't know shit and that you're an imposter, right? I used to get imposter syndrome all the time
Dude, I
when I
still
was a
do
young.
sometimes. Yeah, for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah, and it's especially when we get the chance to talk to some of these greats that
Right.
we're just like, oh shit, like I gotta do some research, right?
It hit me the other day
Mhm,
when I was talking to my girlfriend, but
mhm,
about the podcast, and
mhm,
it just sounds like it's not us. It just
mhm.
sounds like it's so weird to have a normal because my girlfriend she knows I mean she's the one who puts up with me, poor thing. So like she
Yeah, yeah.
understands, this guest and scheduling, and that means we can't do dinner and whatever. So it's so weird to be able to talk to her in such like flippant terms about like, oh yeah, no, I'm talking about the one with Michael Ellis, not the one with
Yeah,
and we're
yeah,
just
yeah.
throwing these names around.
She has no clue who they
Yeah, but
are.
as I hear myself saying this, I'm like, who the fuck do you think you are? Like,
Yeah, 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 yeah,
but
yeah,
it's just
yeah.
cool.
Yeah, no, it's dope. It's really dope. And to kind of go back to the point of just the anxiety that you might get, it's just like, it's in due time, right? Like
Right.
I loved when Larry Crone was talking about um, you know, he was talking about like I just spent $10,000 to go to Ivan Balbanov's.
Right.
Was it
Right.
Ivan? Yeah, it was.
Yeah,
Or
Ivan
no, no, no,
Balbanov.
no, no. It was Bart. It was Bart Ballone's. It was Bart
Oh,
Balone.
okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
sorry, Bart Ballone's. He was going to Bart Balone's seminar. Um, I think. Sorry, Larry, if we misquoted you. He was going to. He spent $10,000 to go to someone else's seminar. Is the
Right.
point? And this
Right.
guy's been doing it for 25 years,
Well, and he just retired.
and he just retired. And this was
Right.
something that this guy had a game plan. It's evolved throughout the last 25 years, but now he's ready to go and to go and learn and go. So it's something that was so humbling and that was so actually reassuring to know that it doesn't matter how long you've been doing this, as long as you keep doing it, and as long as Tyler says, dog training stays stimulating, you will learn a lot of stuff. And
Hmm.
one thing Larry said was, he goes, I want to learn at least 50% of what there is to know in dog training before I die.
Right.
And I was just like, that's dope.
Yeah.
He goes, right now I know 5%. So bouncing between methods, guys, don't be so anxious to know everything, right? Do what you can, be present with your clients, be present with your dogs, take the time to really hone in on your methods and on your skill sets, because sometimes some of the stuff that you're learning, you're not ready to learn it until you've mastered
Hmm.
your skill set, whatever
Yeah.
that is.
Dude,
So,
and that's that point that I make all the time with the watching video is like I'll watch two really high level grapplers go at it. And my skill set currently, my personal skill set allows me to see what they're doing that's better. Oh, he grabbed this here, he did this there, he did this faster than I would, whatever. And so I get to that point where all these things that I've just taken in, I've seen them, but I haven't yet absorbed them and made them me.
mhm,
Once I've done that, 2, 3, 5 months later, whatever, now I'm that much better than I was, but obviously still not nearly as good as them. I
right.
can watch that same match again, exact same match, and see now new stuff again and so
Yeah.
on and so on. And you slowly absorb what you can. But it was never, I mean, just the very concept of learning, the very concept of information was never supposed to scare you or like
Yeah.
squeeze you down.
Yeah.
Take in what you can take in right now, get
Yeah.
that little bit better, roll with it, get comfortable with it, then take in some more. Digest it piece by piece by piece.
Yep. There's no rush.
Right.
There's plenty of dogs and they're not going anywhere.
Another
So,
point to bouncing between the methods and never mastering one though is it can be confusing to the dog,
mhm,
trainer aside, right? And
yeah.
again, that can be because the dog, I mean, if you're working leash pressure downs and then move to food downs and then move to whatever,
Yep. Yep. Yep.
you're moving the target so much that it is good for dogs to learn various things and be well rounded. But if you're
Mhm,
switching back and forth all the time, they
mhm,
can get like whiplash.
mhm,
And
mhm, mhm.
especially again, if this is a method that you personally aren't comfortable with yet because it's new to you, your timing, your technique isn't even going to be there yet. So you're not even giving the dog really a fair chance because they're not even getting like a proper example of the method.
Right.
Right.
Right. Yeah. Well, they're not, it's the method's not there consistently enough for the dog to adapt and learn from it.
Right.
Yeah.
But my point being though, it's not even there when it is there. It's not even there from somebody who's competent in it.
Oh yeah. Got it.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like learning English from a non-English speaker.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Right. It's just not fair. Like you were never going to learn, but that wasn't your fault,
Yeah. Makes sense. And you'll learn all the mistakes that all the errors that come along with it. Yeah.
Correct. Right.
Cool.